Hi, Liutai. I wanted to leave you some feedback on your rough draft, your week two writing assignment. I really like a lot of the things that you're working with here. I think that you have more than enough to work on for your narrative. Um, so it's uh, it's clear that your mom and your aunties, right? But I would say really in particular your mom has had a huge influence on who you are. Um, so I really like this kind of story that you're telling that she she is considered a great success, right? In that not only did she complete an advanced degree, but she is using her status with that degree to give back. And throughout that process, you have learned a lot from her, even though you felt those moments of separation. So I think that I'm beginning to see um, a narrative, right? Um, you've got some good background information and you've got some clear lessons that you've gained. I think what I want to see you work on, one of the things I want to see you work on, is the arc, right? So one of the things I know that you're in quarantine right now, and I'm sorry about that. But one of the things that we've been talking about in class is having a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. And one of the things that distinguishes the middle from the rest of the draft is making sure that you, as the principal character in your draft, experiences a moment of change, right? That you're different from the person that you started out. And I think that that's kind of naturally in some of the points in this draft, right? You say at one point growing up, I was told that I was not a very happy child. So if you could kind of pause and either, explain that or show that in description, that would help out the reader so much. But then I think by the end, I don't think I would describe you as someone who's unhappy. I think you come across in this draft as someone who is very confident, someone who is very driven, and someone who knows himself quite well. Um, so I wonder if we could, if you, right, if you could figure out how do you move yourself from that unhappy kid. So what are some of the pressures, both personal and external, that probably shaped you in being this unhappy kid, but then throughout these lessons from your auntie and aunties, I should say plural, and your mother, and perhaps even the absence of your father shaped you into who you are now. So if you could illustrate that in a specific moment, I think that this would be really powerful. I want to point out something to you where you in this draft. You say these different experiences have changed my view on society and how corrupt it really is. Um, I think I know what you mean here. I think one of the things that you're trying to suggest is, uh, well, we've really got two different um, places here. Yeah, two different places here. I thought so. Where your mother is attending university in Hawaii, and then you are in Western Samoa. And I'm wondering really what you mean. Yeah, I'm wondering what you really mean by society being corrupt. Because I get the sense the society that you grew up in, particularly the lessons that you learned from your aunties and your mother, I would describe it as the exact opposite. So I kind of get the sense that you're talking about broader society, maybe mainstream society. If the entire essay took place in Hawaii, I would say maybe mainland United States, right? I think that's what you mean because some of the values that mainland United States aren't necessarily the ones that we see in this draft. and that's a shame, right? Because one of the things that we see in this draft that you learned particularly from your mother is how important it is, to take care of the most vulnerable. And I would agree with you that we don't necessarily see that in mainstream American society. And a pity, it being a pity is the wrong word, I think. Um, I think it's I think it's wrong, right? I think it's corrupt. And I think one of the things that your narrative is doing is exposing that. However, what I want you to think about is ending this where you do, because I really felt hope, right? Until this moment. And it's not that you can't leave the reader with a sharp critique. I think that's perfectly acceptable. But I think one of the things that your narrative illustrates is that people like you, right? Meaning people like you that have had these powerful role models and experiences have a lot of power to change that corruption, right? Um, and that, I wonder, is if that's really the image that you want to end with. I would encourage you to do that, because this kind of, I know what I think I know what you mean, but it threw me for a loop. So I wonder if this idea can be reinforced, um, in more depth earlier in the draft. But then what you could focus on is all those lessons that you get from your aunties and your mother that suggest here's the way to fight that corruption, right? We are teaching you how to fight that. I think that would be really powerful. One thing that I want you to pay attention to in your writing is repetition and sentence fragments. So you say, as a first generation immigrant, my mother had it very rough. It was a very hard experience for her. Uh, Life was very rough. You only need to say that once, and then what you do after saying that it's rough, explain why, right? So what specific things, like concrete examples, can you give that would explain why you describe your mom's experience as rough? Does that make sense? There's no need for you to repeat the idea over and over again. Instead, illustrate it, reinforce it with concrete examples. I also wanted to talk to you briefly about sentence fragments. So this is an example of a sentence fragment. And what I mean by that is it's a piece of a sentence, but it's not a full sentence. So for a sentence to be complete, it has to have a subject and a verb. And therefore, a sentence fragment is either missing the subject, the verb, or quite possibly both. In this case, it's missing both. And so let me read this to you in isolation. Moving across the Pacific Ocean, all the way from Western Samoa, leaving family and friends behind, searching for a better life. Can you hear that there's no subject in that sentence? Meaning, we don't know who is moving, who is leaving, and who is searching. But we do if we read it in connection with the sentence before that, right? You're talking about your mom. But you put your period here and turn this into a fragment. So one of the easiest ways to fix this specific kind of fragment is to attach it to a sentence, to a complete sentence. Because then we have, as a first generation immigrant, my mother had it very rough, moving across the ocean all the way from Western Samoa, leaving family and friends behind, searching for a better life. And then you do the same thing here, leaving her homeland in hopes of finding a job to be able to send money back to support her family many miles away. This is another example of a sentence fragment, but to me, you're getting into repetition here because I think that you've explained it here. So that's something that I want you to read for. Read for sentence fragments. Read for pieces of sentences. Know that looks like it's a habit of yours. And once you return to class, I want to teach you a very specific strategy that'll help you with sentence fragments. So please remind me. So those are the things that I want to talk to you about with your draft. I want you to start thinking about that arc. What's that clear beginning, middle, and end? And I want you to start reading your drafts for sentence fragments. All right. I hope you're doing well. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Like I said, I know you're in quarantine, but please reach out if you have any questions. All right. Take care.